Yes, we are a family winery. The owners now are my parents, Felix and Rita. Felix Lorenzo Cachazo. I have a sister who is the enologist, Angela. My sister and I are the 6th generation of winemakers in the family. Obviously, nothing to do with what it was before. Historically, our ancestors made white wines to sell as bulk wine in the area. It was my grandfather in 1946 who started to bottle his own wines. That was rare at the time, to bottle wines. Obviously, those wines had nothing to do with the ones we make now. What my grandpa and his ancestors made were dorados. Dorados were wines of high alcoholic grade, very strong and structured, with 18 or 20% alcohol by volume. Back then, there were only around 8 producers. At the end of the 1970s, they realized that those wines were dying, and they had a grape, a very distinct grape, the Verdejo, that was about to disappear. They realized that they needed to produce a new style of wine at a time when the consumption of white wine in Spain was minimal. White wine was even seen as a bad wine at the time. Against all odds, those 8 producers decided to create Rueda. Indeed, what they did was to create a new style of wine, which was even more complicated. They created a new wine, and they had to create a new consumer for it. We are in the Castilian Plateau, in the middle of Spain. And here, as Antonio Machado used to say, we have 10 months of winter and 2 of hell. We have 10 very cold months and 2 very hot months and an extreme climate. In the end, we have realized that the worse you treat the grape, the better it expresses itself. It needs such an extreme cold with frosts of 15 degrees below zero and summers of 40 degrees Celsius to express itself as it does. We are at 700 to 800 meters above sea level. Right in my town, we are at 800 meters. It's the most elevated town in Rueda DO. Today, for example, we had a night with a temperature of 5 degrees, and during the day, we hit 30 degrees C. In the end, the grape welcomes this. This is not the common soil of this area. The characteristic soil of Rueda is full of rolling stones. Lots of stones that help a lot during the ripening of the grapes. But I wanted to bring you to this zone because it is rare. Rare for 2 reasons: the soil, which is pure sand, and the age of the vineyard, which dates prior to phylloxera. It's at least 140 years old. These 2 are interconnected between them. Without this type of soil, the vineyards would not have survived. In the end, the phylloxera is an insect that moves underground, making tunnels. They reach the roots and dry the plant. It basically ended with the vineyards of the whole of Europe. Luckily, as this is a terrain with lots of sand, the phylloxera could not make tunnels as they would collapse. And this was the big secret for this vineyard to survive. We cannot forget our origins and roots. We are people of strong convictions. We love our villages. And we have a big problem with population loss in our area, and it's a social commitment to continue working with small viticulturists. Of course, we have our own vineyard. We have around 30 hectares, but we also work with small viticulturists, like with Tino in this case, who is the owner of this vineyard. He takes care of it and does it better than anybody. We elaborate this vineyard separately from the rest. Even the cluster has nothing to do with the modern Verdejo. This Verdejo has a much smaller cluster, much tighter, with the berries closer to each other. It even has a more intense green colour. Nothing to do with the modern Verdejo that has more assistance to grow and leads to much larger clusters. We used to think that since it comes from older vines, it should create more aromatic wines. Indeed, this area produces wines less aromatic than the modern Verdejos, but they are characterized by their structure. These are wines that are more structured, more rounded and oily. The youngest vineyards provide more nose. However, this vineyard provides longevity to the wine.